Live from the BDN Studios, it's Bang and Dang.
That's awesome.
If you don't like that, then
You ain't black.
Welcome back to Outlaws and Gunslingers Mafia Edition.
It's going to be a double feature.
Double feature here. Up first, 5 Points Gang. And the second half of this one's going to be a former member of said 5 Points Gang.
Frankie Yale.
Frankie Yale.
Iola or something.
And, how he ran Brooklyn. One of the first gangsters to go off on his own, employed Al Capone, but we'll get to that later. First up, speaking of employing Al Capone, these 5 Points Gang did that as well as Johnny Torrio and Lucky Luciano. Street gang of primarily Irish-American origins, based in 5 Points of Lower Manhattan during the late 19th and early 20th century, founded by Paul Kelly, who was born Paolo Antonio Vaccarelli, December 23rd, 1876, in New York City. So he's a New York City born.
He was Irish?
To Italian immigrant parents.
Italian.
From Potenza, Basilicata, Italy. Yeah, he grew up in the Bowery in Manhattan. After several jobs, he started as a boxer in the bantamweight division. In the 1890s, he changed his name to Paul Kelly for association with the politically dominant ethnic Irish politicians. Well, his career was short and quite successful, though. In 1897, he was described by the Bridgeport Herald newspaper as one of the quote-unquote fastest and cleanest little boxers in the business.
Nice.
He used his boxing earnings to open brothels and clubs in the 5 Point areas. How much did he get paid?
A lot, I'm sure.
Jeez.
Boxing was huge back then.
Yeah, that's true.
The area of Manhattan where four streets met, which was Anthony, which is now Worth, Cross, which is now Moscow, Orange, which is now Baxter, and Little Water, which is now non-existent. So if you guys know any of those streets, give us a holla.
All right.
They all converged and known as the 5 Points. Mulberry, notorious for slum tenements, was one street down from the 5 Points. Everybody knows Mulberry. This area, now the present-day location of Chinatown, lay between Broadway and the Bowery. By the 1820s, this district had been a center of settlement for poor immigrants and was considered a slum area of rundown wood frame and brick dwellings. What was that movie? Slum Millionaire or
Slumdog Millionaire, but that was in
India.
Yeah.
Warehouses and commercial enterprises dating from the late 18th century. That's where all this area was brick buildings and broken down wood frames and falling apart
warehouses with windows all busted out.
And it was populated by mostly poor English and Scot-Irish people, with increasing waves of German, Welsh, and Irish refugees by the 1840s. What was Welsh again? Wales?
Yeah. Gambling dens and brothels were numerous in the 5 Points area, which was considered a dangerous destination, where many people had been mugged, particularly at night. 1842, famous British author Charles Dickens visited the area and was appalled at the poor living conditions and substandard housing. He said, "I will never return, but I will make a lot of money probably writing about it."
He did.
In the pre-Civil War era, Catholic immigrants often dealt with ethnic prejudice and class discrimination from the nativist white Anglo-Saxon Protestants. All right, too long of a name.
Right.
As a result, many Irish immigrants formed local street gangs such as the Carry-Onans, the 40 Thieves, the Shirt Tails, and the Chichesters, to rebel against their low social status. These street gang members soon turned to crime.
I mean, of course. What else are they going to turn to?
Gang if you don't do crime.
Right. What else are they going to turn to?
Unless you're the He-Man Woman Haters Club.
Right. 2002 film, Gangs in New York, is set in 5 Points based on Herbert Asbury's historical novel portraying the strife between old-line Americanized Protestant English and Scot-Irish immigrants and newly arrived persecuted Roman Catholic Irish from the 1840s to the Civil War draft riots of 1863. I never heard about Civil War draft riots. Shortly after the American Civil War, these gangs began to dissipate, with remaining members joining powerful gangs such as the Dead Rabbits.
Dead Rabbits?
And the Wahoos.
The Wahoos. The Dead Rabbits are in the Gangs of New York movie.
It should be. Eventually, the influence and numbers of these Irish gangs started to wane. By the 1870s, a new wave of Italian and Eastern European Jewish immigrants were settling into the area. Criminal gangs of Irish, Jewish, and Italian criminals began competing for control of the territory.
Criminal gangs of criminals.
Right. They began competing for control of the territory, rackets, and revenue to be made from illicit activities. And we all know that the Italians and the Jewish, they want it all, especially the Jewish. Monk Eastman's Eastman coin collectors originally had many Irish members before becoming predominantly Jewish.
Italian-American Paul Kelly, now back on this guy, formed the 5 Points Gang, then made up of mostly Italians. The gang had a reputation for brutality and in battles with rival gangs, they often fought to the death.
Damn right.
The gang would then gain more power and members when Kelly recruited the remaining members of the other 5 Points Gang, such as the Dead Rabbits and the Wilds.
Right.
And then as time went on, Jewish, Polish, and Eastern European immigrants would also be brought within the ranks of the 5 Points Gang, making them even more powerful and influential. Al Capone came from the James Street Gang and would later lead the Chicago outfit. Charles Luciano also joined the 5 Points Gang in his younger years and was later considered the most powerful criminal in the country.
Yeah.
He sure was.
Well, as 5 Points Gang became more experienced, Kelly and his lieutenants saw the money to be made by supporting corrupt politicians in their election bids. By threatening voters, falsifying voter lists, stuffing ballot boxes, the gang aided city officials of the Democratic Party political machine, Tammany Hall, to retain power.
I bet they did.
Sounds familiar.
Right.
Offering her services as Tammany Hall politician Big Tim Sullivan, Kelly was alleged to have used his gang to help elect Tom Foley against Tammany Hall incumbent Patty Diver.
Patty Diver!
The latter was a local saloon owner campaigning to keep the red light districts out of the 4th Ward during the 1901 2nd Assembly District primary elections.
He didn't want to get those. He didn't want those brothels in there, but he's a Tammany Hall guy.
Yeah.
They had to get him out. Old school. Right. On the day of the primary on September 17th, Kelly's gang of over 1,500 men assaulted Diver supporters, blocked polling booths, and committed numerous acts of voter fraud to win the election for Foley. Some voted several times during the day. One gang member claimed, "I got 53 votes in today, boys." Foley was the challenger, clearly, and not the incumbent. We know this. The 2nd District already had numerous houses of prostitution as Diver.
I think it's Diver. It has to be Diver.
Well, his name's Diver now.
All right.
The 2nd District already had numerous houses of prostitution, as Diver, who was a judge and longtime Tammany Hall leader, had to know of, obviously.
Right.
He was reported to have drawn a pistol on a personal enemy. Okay. Later, Kelly gained control of the vice districts of the 4th and 6th wards, including prostitution, and controlled a virtual criminal monopoly in the 5 Points. So it's us now, baby.
Prostitution, dude. That shit goes back forever. It's just ridiculous.
Right.
It's like
What do they call it? The world's oldest profession.
All right. As the turn of the 20th century, the only competitors to the 5 Pointers were from Monk Eastman's gang with more than 2,000 members who controlled the Lower East Side. Eastman, an old-fashioned thug of the 19th century, was the opposite of the cultured Kelly. While both gangs were under control of Tammany Hall, the gangs frequently had armed conflict among their members for control of the neutral territory along the Bowery. Always.
Right. Well, 1901, a 5-pointer shot Eastman in the stomach, but he survived. Soon after, one of his crew killed a 5-pointer in retaliation. By 1903, the feud escalated and the two gangs openly engaged in warfare. Can't be doing that openly.
No.
In one incident, Kelly, Torrio, and 55 pointers were in a gun battle with a similarly sized force of Eastman's gang.
Oh, shit. That was a hell of a battle.
City police called to the scene, had to retreat from the battle, which lasted several hours.
They're like, whoa.
Only 3 men were killed, though.
Oh, terrible shots.
And many were wounded. When the police finally gained control of the situation, they arrested Eastman, but he spent only a few hours in jail because a Tammany-controlled judge released him after Eastman swore that he was innocent.
Oh, whatever.
He's like, oh, all right, I'll believe you.
Sure. The general public was angered about warfare in the streets. He's like, this is bullshit. People are like, come on.
Running around.
Right. This is freaking nuts. During a brawl between members of the two factions, Kelly punched Jack Shimsky in the nose. Ooh. Shimsky, one of Eastman's best subordinates, sought revenge by challenging Kelly to a boxing match. Hey, come on, that's how they should always do.
You don't want to do that, though.
And Kelly's like, are you sure? I heard you're a boxer. Let's see what you really got. Who is this Shimsky guy?
He's one of Eastman's best men.
Right, probably his best,
enforcer guy, right. I would assume.
Despite his short stature of 5'2" and slender build, Kelly won the fight. He knocked out Shimsky, a 6 foot, 230-pound man, in the 3rd round. An unconscious Shimsky was carried out of the ring by his seconds. Kelly's 5-point gang controlled the area to the west of the Bowery, and Eastman's everything to the east. obviously.
Why can't they just keep it like that then?
Tammany Hall.
Like the Gaza Strip or something.
Right, and Tammany Hall was like, look, we just want a neutral area between them to be off limits.
Right.
Can we just have
like
a safe zone?
Or the demilitarized zone in
North
Korea.
Korea? Yeah, in the Koreas. Can we just do that, please?
They're like, nope, because we're going to fight openly over the territory.
Well, it probably happened to be the best part.
It's probably like the main strip or something where all the brothels and shit are. Well, the gangs fought openly over that territory, attracting police attention and civic outrage when civilians were wounded. Tammany Hall called Kelly and Eastman to a sit-down meeting. A Tammany Hall deputy named Tom Foley, who we already said, brought Kelly and Eastman together and told them that neither would receive any political protection if they did not resolve the border dispute.
Oh, shit.
Officials ordered them to have a boxing match to settle the issue, didn't they learn?
Right.
The winner would take control of the prized neutral territory, and the war would end, supposedly.
Okay, well, on this appointed day for this said boxing match, which is going to happen again, I don't know why, it's Eastman now is going to box Kelly. Hundreds of men from both sides met in an abandoned house in the Bronx. Eastman and Kelly, they fought each other viciously. Kelly had been a boxer, obviously, and he was said to make a better showing in the earlier rounds, but Eastman was a larger man and fought ferociously. The fight lasted 2 hours, and by the end of the match, both had suffered heavy punishment. But neither man had been knocked out, and the match was declared a draw.
Damn.
The gang leaders told their men that they were still at war.
Nobody won.
So nothing happened, right?
All right. At this point, the Tammany Hall bosses decided to back the 5 Points gang and to withdraw any legal or political help for Eastman and his
that's got to suck. Dude took an ass beating and then lost anyway.
1904, Eastman was beaten unconscious by a policeman who had foiled a robbery in progress.
Oh, shit.
And Eastman was then convicted of robbery, and Tammany Hall, eager to end the warfare, declined to provide protection.
Oh, wow.
And he got sentenced to 10 years in Sing Sing.
Oh, shit.
Sing Sing, huh? I wonder if... I have to check that out. There's got to be a lot of
people.
Gangs formed there, huh?
I bet. Eastman's imprisonment meant the 5 Points gang had no effective rival for control of organized crime activities in the Lower East Side. During that time, Kelly's organization expanded into other parts of Manhattan and parts of New Jersey. The Eastman crew was largely eclipsed when Eastman's successor, Max Kid Twist Zurbach, a former member of the 5 Points gang until he defected to the Eastman gang, he was moited in 1908 by a hitman of the 5 Points gang, allegedly at the behest of Paul Kelly.
I wouldn't say allegedly. He is the leader.
Right.
Kelly brought a more business-like approach to his gang activities than Eastman. He opened the New Brighton Athletic Club, which was a 2-story cafe and dance hall.
Right. He made it look somewhat, it's not a slum.
Right. That was at 57 Great Jones Street, which is between Lafayette and Bowery, where he charmed socialites and other prominent citizens who frequented his club.
Right.
Always well-dressed, he spoke French, Italian, and Spanish fluently. And appreciated fine art and classical music. Where the hell did this guy go to school?
Right.
His educated and sophisticated persona impressed many of New York's elite.
I can see why the Tammany Hall was like, we're going to go with the...
Definitely.
Right.
Yeah, Eastman's like grew up in the slums or something.
They look at Paul Kelly, and he's wearing a suit, and he's got his hair slicked back, and they look over at Eastman. He's spitting tobacco into a spittoon, and
it looks like a
right.
Looks like a dude that's been on a 2-week horse ride.
Right. He looks like Biff Cannon or whatever. What was his name from Back to the Future 3?
Oh, right. Yeah.
Mad Dog Cannon.
Mad Dog Biff, wasn't it? Biff the Mad Dog or something?
Biff the Bag Dog Cannon or some shit. Paul Kelly survived an attempt on his life, though, after being shot 3 times by 2 of his former lieutenants, James T. Biff Ellison and Pat Razor Riley.
Hey, Razor Riley.
They did this in a gun battle inside the New Brighton
in
1905. Kelly, drinking with bodyguards Bill Harrington and Rough House Hogan, returned their fire as well. Harrington died protecting Kelly. Riley and Ellison escaped. A wounded Kelly was taken to a private hospital before he could be arrested. Kelly turned himself in a month later, but charges were dropped due to his political connections.
Clearly.
Why he waited a month.
Right.
Ellison, he was arrested in 1911, convicted, sent to prison. He became mentally ill and was placed in an asylum, where he eventually died. Riley was found by police dead from pneumonia in his basement hideout in Chinatown.
Wow.
This dude got sick and was like, whatever, I'm out.
He's going to die here, I guess. Tammany Hall pressure made him keep a low profile after this incident, while New York Police Commissioner William McAdoo closed the New Brighton for protection of his socialite regulars. The failed assassination began the decline of Kelly's dominance in the New York underworld. Kelly and his gang did not disappear, however. After he closed the New Brighton, he moved operations to the Italian immigrant communities in Harlem and Brooklyn, while also retaining ties to his old neighborhood, becoming a vice president of the International Longshoremen Association.
So Harlem and Brooklyn were Italian at first?
Yeah. He became vice president of the International Longshoremen Association under his Americanized birth name of Paul Vaccarelli.
Right, he was a fisherman?
No, but he's president of the Longshoremen's Association.
I don't know how.
He was based in the Chelsea area because he's a freaking mobster. That's why.
Well, he was later expelled from the ILA in 1919, but that only lasted a year, and when he returned, he took leadership of a spontaneous port-wide strike begun in protest against a wage increase of only 5 cents an hour, which management had agreed to. With the support of Mayor John F. Hyland, Kelly was appointed to a commission to resolve the strike. He ended it, but did not achieve any concessions for the strikers.
He's like, guys, just go back to work, man.
Right, it's like, it's stupid.
Just accept your 5 cents.
Come on. Kelly subsequently became a labor racketeer, providing muscle in labor disputes during the 1920s. He died of natural causes in 1936. Good for him.
Right. He didn't go the usual gangster way, huh?
Right. Gradually, the Mafia gangs took over the rackets and criminal activities formerly controlled by the 5 Points Gang.
Former 5-pointers such as Johnny Torrio, Al Capone, Meyer Lansky. Lansky, I believe, was a Jew.
Yeah, Meyer Lansky.
And he couldn't get into the family, but he's like one of the most important guys in Mafia history.
It's a very good movie. You guys should watch it. And it came out like in the past 5 years. It's called Lansky.
Yeah, Lansky.
It's pretty good.
Yeah. And of course, Luciano, they became the leaders of new groups, and with mentoring from influential businessman and criminal genius Arnold Rothstein. That's not the Rothschild.
No, still Rothstein.
Right. Expanded their operations on a national and international basis. With the 18th Amendment and the Volstead Act establishing prohibition in 1920.
That was the stupidest thing ever done in America. I can't believe that ever happened.
It lasted for 14 years.
I can't believe that.
Profits from bootleg liquor became a huge source of revenue for the Mafia families. And, well, we have a whole...
You know how many people died back then of tainted liquor?
Bathtub, Jim.
Oh, my gosh, dude.
We covered that in one of our episodes. Yeah, gross. That's why they said, what'd you have to do? Like shake it up or something, and if the bubbles stayed for a while, it was good or something like that? Yeah. Kelly's second in command, John Torrio, was the first to establish his style of racketeering in Chicago, recruiting Capone to join him there. Torrio later helped form a national crime syndicate in the United States following the demise of the 5 Points Gang, and after Capone replaced him in Chicago in coordination with Luciano and Lansky. And thus, we get the old Mafia families that we're about to get covering here in a couple episodes. But right after this, you'll hear about old Frankie Yale. Johnny Torrio actually got him into the 5 Points Gang and groomed him for a life of crime. So we shall see his story.
Freaking groomers.
He's one of the biggest gangsters that nobody talks about.
Right.
And he wasn't even part of a family.
No.
Officially. But we'll see his story. And then right after him, we'll see his story develop into this war, which is known as the Castellammarese War, between two families. And then Luciano takes over, and we'll have like another double episode with the war and then the creation of the commission, which leads to the 5 families, and we'll get into the Genovese crime family.
No, there's just so much stuff, guys.
We'll cover all the people in the Genovese crime family. We'll go family by family, and then we'll hit the...
If you're thinking, how come I don't recognize any of these names, but Capone, and
there's lots.
You got a crowd before you walk, buds.
Yeah, we'll do all the 5 families. Then we'll get into the Chicago outfit. We already did the Purple Gang.
All right. Then we got wait till you get
the
to Vegas.
Buffalo crime family.
Oh my.
We got all that. Well, we already did Bugsy sequel too.
Yeah, but still, there's more in Vegas than just that.
Well, people that we're going to talk about already. There's not a Vegas crime family. All the families were in Vegas.
Right.
So yeah, we got a lot going on ahead in this Mafia series. So stay tuned, because the murders and the wars and the violence is just about to pick up and get crazier.
I'm waiting to compare this. I've been waiting for this. The Mafia area compared to the Wild West area. I want to see how similar it is. Right. I want to see how similar it is. I bet it's so similar.
Last 2 episodes are pretty similar.
Right.
Already. So the, I don't want to say little known story of Frankie Yale, but definitely when you look in the annals of Mafia history, Frankie Yale is one of those guys who's often overlooked and you really don't hear about him, but he's one of the first Mafia gangsters in the 20s before the 5 families and the commission and all that started. Mess around with Capone and all that stuff. Took a hold of Brooklyn for a while. So we're going to hear his little life story. The old life and times of Frankie Yale. And this guy, I'm sure, I think anybody knows Frankie Yale knows the death picture because it's one of the most famous mob death pictures,
Right.
of him laying outside the car. But Francesco Iole, that's how you say it in English. Don't know how you say it in Italian, so forgive me. Which is, he's known as Frankie Yale, clearly, was an American gangster based in Brooklyn, and he was also the second employer of Al Capone.
Nice.
He was born in Longobucco, Italy, on January 22nd, 1893, to Domenico and Isabella Iole. He had an older brother, John, and two younger siblings, Assunta and Angelo. So, Italian names.
Right.
He and his family arrived in the United States about 1900 or so, and as a teenager, he was befriended by Johnny Torrio, who ushered him into the said 5 Points gang and groomed him for a life of crime.
Oh, shit.
Shortly after Torrio left for Chicago in 1909, Frankie Americanized his last name to Yale from Iole. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Despite his medium height and chubby build, Yale was a fearsome fist fighter and a thief. Good for him.
I mean, you got to know how to fist fight if you're going to steal.
Right.
1910, age 17, Yale and a friend, a wrestler named Bobby Nelson, severely beat several men during a fight in Coney Island Pool Hall, which involved cracking pool cues and hurling billiard balls.
All right.
One of his early arrests in October 1912 was a suspicion of homicide. Like his mentor Johnny Torrio, Yale was one of the new breed of gangstas who believed in putting business ahead of ego.
Yup.
After getting started with some basic racketeering, I'm just going to get you started with some basic racketeering, bud.
I went in there with a,
Right.
a degree in racketeering.
I went in there with a bachelor's in stealing penny candy to a master's in stealing the whole store.
Right.
Yale, I don't know. Yale took control of Brooklyn's ice delivery trade by selling protection, quote unquote, and creating monopolies.
Damn, you know you're in the 1900s when there's an ice delivery trade.
Right.
Big ass blocks of ice you got to deliver like 3 times a week.
I mean, it still happens today.
Yeah, but blocks of ice?
I mean, bags of ice.
All right, but back then they were getting blocks of ice to put in their ice box. That's why they called it an ice box.
Like a huge block of
Right.
ice. 1917, with the proceeds from these rackets, Yale opened the Harvard Inn Bar on Seaside Walk in Coney Island.
Yale and Harvard, huh? Good for him.
Shit.
Hoping to capitalize on the collegiate name of his bar, he began using the name Yale. Okay, so that's why he went. Okay.
Right.
It was at the Harvard Inn that a young bouncer named Al Capone got his famous facial scars, which we covered in his episode, in a dispute with Frankie Galluccio after Capone flirted with Galluccio's sister. And then Galluccio said, "Psst." After 2 years in Yale's employ, Capone was shipped off to west to Chicago by Yale and joined Torrio's organization there. And we already know what happens there. We'll get to the Chicago outfit later. Yale's gang engaged in Black Hand extortion, which obviously everybody was doing around this time.
Yep.
And ran a string of brothels. Their gang became the first new style mafia family, which included Italians from all regions and could work in partnership with other ethnic groups if it was good for business. Yale's quote-unquote services to his customers included offering protection to local merchants and controlling food services for restaurants, as well as ice deliveries for Brooklyn residents.
All right. So that works out, right? Yale's notorious sideline was his line of cigars. Foul-smelling stogies packaged in boxes that bore his smiling face. Yale also owned and operated his own funeral home at 6604 14th Avenue. He and his family lived across the very street of that funeral home. When asked about his profession, Yale just simply commented he was an undertaker. Boom. At the beginning of Prohibition, Yale became one of Brooklyn's biggest bootleggers.
Yeah.
I mean, right? In addition to Capone, other gangsters who worked under Yale at one time or another included Joe Adonis, Anthony Little Augie Carfano, and Albert Anastasia.
Ooh. Well, Yale's top assassin at this time was Willie Two Knife Altieri, nicknamed as such to his preferred method of dispatching a victim.
With 2 knives?
2 knives. Soon after the Harvard Inn opened, Yale married Maria DeLapia, with whom he had 2 daughters, Rosa and Isabella. They later separated, and then he married a younger woman named Lucita in 1927, and they had a daughter, Angelina.
Okay.
He was also noted as a stylish dresser, favoring expensive suits and diamond jewelry, just like Al Capone. Huh? One newspaper reported calling him the Beau Brummel of Brooklyn.
Hey.
Who's Beau Brummel?
Well, Brum's got to be somebody, right? Of somebody.
He is
Of London, huh?
important figure in Regency, England. For many years, he was the arbiter of British men's fashion. Okay, so he was like a
he's a well-dressed man.
he was like a what's that guy's name?
ZZ Top.
Versace.
Oh, yeah.
Like a Versace type guy, huh?
Yeah, it was everybody's crazy about Will.
Right.
Boom,
He
boom.
was the Beau Brummel of Brooklyn, huh?
Nice. Fantastic. Yale was also known for generosity toward the less fortunate people in his neighborhood, which all these guys are, who often approached them and requested financial assistance.
Oh, you don't want to do that, though.
After a local deli owner was robbed, Yale replaced his lost cash.
Oh,
He's
good
like,
for
"Here you go,
him."
bud. Now make me a sandwich.
Right. Gabagool.
He'd be like, "That's $4, sir." He's like, "Kitty."
Gabagool.
When a fish peddler lost his cart, Yale gave him $200 with an admonition. Get a horse. You're too old to walk, he says.
$200? Holy shit, that's a lot of money.
He said, get a horse. You're too old to walk. Yale was dubbed the Prince of Pals.
Good man. Prince of Pals.
Fantastic. But guess what? Yale was a very violent man who did not hesitate to inflict pain on others that did him wrong.
Mm-hmm.
When angered by his younger brother Angelo, Yale beat him so badly that he wound up in the hospital.
Yeah, poor
I mean,
Angelo.
you got to know what's family, what's not, bud.
Well,
And what deserves getting beat to get in the hospital.
do you, though? When was that one guy that we covered got into a shooting match with his brother,
Right.
like shot him in the face or something.
Those were rednecks, guys.
Yeah. When two extortionists attempted to shake down the popular hat check operator of a neighborhood restaurant, Yale battered the two unconscious. May 1920, Yale traveled to Chicago and personally killed longtime gang boss Big Jim Calissimo at the behest of Chicago outfit friends Torrio and Capone, really. Calissimo was allegedly murdered because he stood in the way of his gang making huge bootlegging profits in Chicago, and Capone and Torrio were like, dude, we want a bootleg. And Calissimo was like, no. Well, although suspected by Chicago police, he was never officially charged.
All right. Look at that. Tradition has long claimed that Yale fought a desperate gang war for control of Brooklyn docks with the Irish White Hand Gang. Recent research has called much of this into question. They also indicate that Yale's worst enemies were not the Irish waterfront racketeers, but they were indeed rival Italian crime families who were constantly jockeying for power in Brooklyn there in the 20s.
Yeah.
I think they are all our enemies. The Irish, the Jewish, the Italian.
Everybody, man.
All right.
Just like in the Giuseppe and the Mafia Camorra war, two gangs were switching sides.
True.
With both Mafia guys.
Yeah, that's right. That is very, very factual. The first known attempt on Yale's life occurred on February 6th of the year 1921, when he and two of his men were ambushed in Lower Manhattan after they stepped from their car in order to attend a banquet. Ooh, right outside a banquet, too.
Yeah, one of Yale's bodyguards was killed and the other wounded, with Yale himself sustaining a severe lung wound.
Oh, shit.
Yale pulled through after an extended recovery. Good for him. 5 months after Yale's injury, July 15, 1921, he, his brother Angelo, and four men were driving on Cropsey Avenue in Bath Beach when another car filled with rival gunmen overtook them and opened fire.
Oh, shit.
Angelo and one of Yale's men were wounded. This attack was believed to have been carried out in revenge for the June 5th killing of a Manhattan mobster named Ernesto Melchiorre, who had been murdered after a late-night visit to the Harvard Inn.
Uh-oh.
I mean, you can't kill the guy at the place where you own, dude.
Well, Ernesto's brother Silvio was believed to have been the driving force behind the unsuccessful attack. 8 days later, Yale's men gunned down Silvio Melchiorre in front of his Little Italy Cafe. They took out Silvio and Ernesto.
Mm-hmm.
Yet another attempt on Yale's life took place on the 9th of July, 1923. Yale's chauffeur, Frank Forte, had taken the Yale family to a christening at a nearby church. While Yale decided to walk back to his 14th Avenue home, Forte drove Maria Yale and her two daughters back. Oh no, thinking he was in a car, I bet. As the women exited the vehicle, a carload of four gangsters rolled past, mistook Frank Forte for his boss, and shot him. Okay, at least not the women.
Right. November 1924, Yale was once again asked to come to Chicago to assist Capone and Torrio, who needed another rival murdered. Why can't they just do it?
Right. Well, hey, dude, why don't you come 1,500 miles across the country?
Stupid.
I'll be there in about a month.
Right. November 10th, 1924, Yale, John Scalise, and
How
Albert...
long do you think it took to get? Well, a week? 3 days?
From train?
Right. 2 days?
Probably a couple days, yeah. A week, maybe?
Maybe he didn't go by train.
Well, I'm sure he did. Well, else would he go? I'm sure the hell wasn't driving.
Could you trust a car to drive that long far back then?
I don't know.
1924? Could you?
I don't know. How many gas stations were around, you know?
Right.
It's not like... It's like charging stations now.
Right. Very
for cars,
true.
you know?
Okay.
On November 10th, 1924, Yale, John Scalise, and Albert Anselmi reportedly entered the Schofield flower shop and killed Northside gang leader Dean O'Banion.
Oh, now they're killing Irish.
8 days later, the Chicago police arrested Yale and Sam Palaccia at Chicago's Union Station as they were about to depart for New York. So there you go, by train. Yale said he had come to town for the funeral of Union Siciliana President Mike Merlo and stayed to see old friends. Yale further claimed to be having lunch at the time of O'Banion's murder. Police could not shake his alibi and were compelled to release him.
Oh, this happened in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, shit.
That's where he was.
Right. There's a lot of Irish people in Chicago.
Irish people everywhere.
No, but Chicago they picked too, like as their main place. I don't know. In the early morning hours of the 26th December, day after Christmas, 1925, White Hand gang boss Richard Pig Leg Lonergan and a few of his men were attacked at Brooklyn's
Lonergan.
Right at Brooklyn's Adonis Club by a handful of Yale's men and visiting Al Capone.
Oh shit!
Well. Capone's son Sonny
Capone
had just had an operation for a mastoid infection in the yak. So that's why Capone's
that's
there.
why Capone is there. Huh?
And he's like, I might as well get in the hit.
Right. Might as well have some fun while I'm in New York.
Lonergan planned on leading his men into the club to attack the Yale crew as they gathered for the usual Christmas party. Instead, Yale had Al Capone and his men set up an ambush and opened fire on Lonergan. Aaron Arms, James Ragtime Howard, Patty Maloney, Cornelius Needles Ferry, and James Hart. A lot of dudes.
Right.
Lonergan, Ferry, and Harms were all killed, while Hart was severely wounded.
Wow.
What about
Ferry?
Patty
And
Maloney?
Yeah, Maloney and Ferry got escaped unscathed, apparently, huh?
Nice.
An examination of the original police reports and witness accounts does not support this version, though. According to author Patrick Downey, the Adonis Club shootings were most probably a spur-of-the-moment reaction to a drunken argument that Needles Ferry had engaged in with Capone and his companions. You don't want to do that.
Mm-mm.
By mid-20s, Yale was noted as one of the most powerful gangsters in Brooklyn. In addition to his numerous rackets, Yale made inroads into labor racketeering and dockside extortion as well. In the spring of 1927, however, Yale's long friendship with Capone began to fray.
Oh, that's never good.
No.
Sneva. As a major importer of Canadian whiskey, Yale supplied much of Capone's whiskey. Yale would oversee the landing of the booze and make sure the Chicago-bound trucks made it safely through New York. Soon, many of the trucks began being hijacked in Brooklyn. Suspecting a double-cross, Capone asked an old pal, James Filzy D'Amato, to keep an eye on his trucks. He should keep an eye on these. D'Amato reported that Yale was indeed hijacking his own booze.
Oh, no.
Soon after this, Capone's spy realized that his cover had been blown and tried unsuccessfully to shoot Yale on the night of July 1st, 1927. 6 nights later, D'Amato was gunned down by a Brooklyn street corner.
Or on it. In a last-ditch effort...
That corner gunned him down.
Right. In a last-ditch effort to mend the relationship with his longtime friend, Capone invited Yale to Chicago to view the Dempsey-Tunney heavyweight title rematch at Soldier Field, September 22nd, 1927. Damn, Soldier Field. Boxing match. Outside. September.
Right.
While their visit was civil enough, the pair's friendship began to rapidly deteriorate after Yale returned to New York. Distracted by a gang war with rival mobster Joe Aiello, a brief exile from Chicago, and the 1928 Republican primary election, Capone had to wait until the spring of 1928 to plan his retaliation, though. So, old Yale gets to live for a little bit longer.
We'll see. All right. July 1st, 1928, exactly 1 year later, on Sunday afternoon, Yale was in his...
Not even exactly a year later.
Well, a year later from when I last read.
No, I guess. July 1st, 1927. Holy shit, it's exactly a year. Holy shit.
D'Amato.
Exactly a year when he killed Capone's little guy, huh? Nice.
July 1st, 1928, Sunday afternoon. Yale was in Sunrise Club, located at 14th Avenue and 65th Street, when he received a cryptic phone call. The caller said something was wrong with Yale's new wife, Lucy. Something wrong with Lucy, who was at home looking after their year-old daughter. Refusing Joseph Periano's offer to drive him, Yale dashed to his brand-new coffee-colored Lincoln Coupe and took off to New Utrecht Avenue, where a Buick sedan carrying 4 armed individuals stopped next to him.
Uh-oh.
While Yale's new Lincoln was fashioned with armor plating, the dealer had neglected to bulletproof the windows.
Well, recognizing his peril, when the light changed, Yale took off, of course. Why did he wait for the light to change? After a chase up New Utrecht, Yale swerved west onto 44th Street with the Buick close behind. Yale's car was soon overtaken by the Buick, whose occupants opened fire at close range. A shotgun blast struck the Brooklyn gang boss on the left side of the head, while a submachine gun bullet sliced through his brain.
Oh, my.
Either wound would have killed him instantly. The now out-of-control Lincoln veered to the right, hopped the curb, and crashed into the stoop of a brownstone house at number 923.
Oh, shit.
Oh, wow.
Oh, man, this is the very first time a submachine gun had been used in a gangland killing in New York City. August 2nd, 1928, it was reported that 2 men were being sought for the murder of Yale. The abandoned Buick was later discovered a few blocks away from the Moita site. Inside the car, police found a .38 caliber revolver, 45 automatic, sawed-off shotgun, and a Thompson submachine gun. Ooh, we had it all. The handguns were eventually traced to Miami. The car itself was traced to Knoxville, Tennessee. Damn. And the submachine gun to a Chicago sporting good dealer named Peter von Franzus.
All right, well, police noted that at the time of the murder, Yale was wearing a 4-carat diamond ring, as well as a belt buckle engraved with his initials. The letters on the buckle held a total of 75 diamond chips. Capone was said to give such belt buckles to those he admired very much. Well, didn't really work out in the end for you, did you, Yale? Police repeatedly questioned Capone about the Yale murder, but nothing came of the inquiries. Yale's murder represented the first time that the Thompson machine gun was used in New York's gangland warfare, which we said.
Ain't that crazy, dude? Can you imagine? Well, Yale didn't get to really see it, but...
Well, I guess not, but... I mean, They were being used in Chicago at this time, though.
Right.
Yale's killers were theorized to be a Capone mob gunmen, Tony Joe Batters Accardo, Fred Killer Burke, Gus Winkler, George Shotgun Ziegler, and Louis Little New York Campiana.
Makes sense, right?
Most of these hitmen are believed to have participated in the St. Valentine's Day massacre just 7 months later.
One of the submachine guns used in the massacre was later ballistically linked to Yale's murder. Yale received one of the most impressive gangland funerals in American history, at which thousands of Brooklynites lined the streets to watch the procession. He was buried wearing evening clothes, holding gray suede gloves and a gold rosary. 38 cars were required to bear all the floral arrangements, while 250 Cadillac limousines carried the mourners. Dude, it's got to be more than the president.
Right.
Yale's $15,000 silver casket rested on an open hearse with the podium. At Holy Cross Cemetery, there was additional drama when 2 different women claimed to be Yale's wife. As the casket was lowered,
Technically, 2 were.
Right. 112 mourners simultaneously tossed roses into the grave. Yale's funeral set a standard of opulence for American gangsters that has been seldom matched over the years.
Yeah, well, Yale...
Is there pictures and stuff of that?
Yes.
I've never seen it.
Well, Yale is somewhat overlooked in crime histories. He was one of New York's leading gangsters in the 1920s. In the initial aftermath of Yale's murder, leadership of his family was overtaken by Anthony Carfano. 4 months later, Joe Masseria orchestrated the murder of mobster Salvatore D'Aquila. And the December 1928 Hotel Statler meeting in Cleveland was most probably called to head off a potential New York gang war. Roughly half of Yale's men and territory were absorbed by the D'Aquila crime family, which was now led by Al Mineo, while the rest remained under Carfano. Yale's murder turned out to be the first in a series of events that facilitated Masseria's attempt to consolidate all of New York's mafia families under his control, which eventually resulted in the Castellammarese War, which
we will get to.
We will get to in our very next episode. We'll have the Castellammarese War, which leads directly into the 5 families, which in turn leads directly
Frankie
into
Yale wasn't too bad.
which leads directly into the creation of the commission.
Right.
So that'll be our next episode. And then we'll finally get into the Mafia as we know it today. Well, the beginning of the Mafia that we know today. And then we'll start out with the Genovese crime family, which is the oldest crime family, which stems from the Morello crime family, which is Giuseppe Morello, which was our just last episode. So we got a lot of Mafia stuff. And in this Genovese crime family, we got lots of people that we're going to cover on this one. So you don't want to miss what we got coming up down the line here on our Mafia series. And it's looking like by the time this is definitely going to be mixed in with the 5 Points Gang episode. So this is going to be a double feature that you just seen. So the 5 Points Gang and Frankie Yale, all here in one episode, and then we will cover the Castellammarese War and the creation of the commission on the next episode. Also, go check out Battles of the American Civil War, wherever you get your podcast, where we cover every single battle of the American Civil War, obviously, where we are almost to the Battle of Gettysburg. Yeah, we just we're finishing up the Siege of Vicksburg and heading straight into the Battle of Gettysburg, and we got a lot of brutal stuff there. So if you like the mob brutal stuff, you like the Civil War brutal stuff. So hit us up over there on the Battles of the American Civil War. We'll be back next week for more Outlaws and Gunslingers Mafia edition. We are the Monthly Michiganders with Bang Dang.